Number 1. 1313, Coruscant's Lost Crime. Epic picture. This, a young Boba Fett navigating the grimy, neon-soaked underbelly of Coruscant level 1313, where even seasoned criminals fear to tread. Star Wars. 1313 wasn't just another video game pitch. It was going to be the franchise's mature masterpiece, and what we lost when it got axed represents one of gaming's greatest tragedies. LucasArts unveiled this dark cinematic adventure at E3 2012, and jaws collectively hit the floor. The game's demo footage showed off third-person action sequences that looked more like deleted scenes from a blockbuster film than traditional gameplay. Set in the criminal underworld of Coruscant's lower levels, 1313 promised to strip away the mystical Force elements and dive headfirst into a gritty crime thriller that felt like Blade Runner meets The Mandalorian. Here's where the story gets fascinating. The game wasn't originally about Boba Fett at all. Players were supposed to control an unnamed bounty hunter who would be killed by a mysterious figure, later revealed to be Boba Fett himself. Only then would players take control of the legendary hunter for the remainder of the adventure. But just 2 months before E3 2012, George Lucas personally mandated that Boba Fett become the main protagonist from the start, forcing developers to scramble and redesign key elements. What made 1313 revolutionary wasn't just its mature rating, a first for Star Wars gaming, but its commitment to practical, grounded storytelling. No lightsabers, no force powers, just blasters, gadgets, and street-smart survival in a galaxy where credits talk louder than prophecies. The game's technical showcase included real-time lighting that made those dingy cantinas feel alive, and character animations so fluid they rivaled motion capture performances in major films. The project's death came swift and brutal when Disney acquired Lucasfilm in October 2012. New corporate priorities meant cleaning house, and 1313 became collateral damage in the transition. LucasArts shuttered on April 3, 2013, taking with it not just this game, but an entire vision of what Star Wars could be when it embraced its seedier side. Former developers have since revealed that 1313 was intended as the first in a series, potentially expanding into films and television. The visual assets and concepts were reportedly so compelling that they influenced later projects like The Mandalorian and Andor, proving that even in death, this canceled masterpiece helped shape the Star Wars we know today. Ready to uncover the galaxy's most shocking secrets? Smash that hype button to get priority notifications when we drop these deep dives. The Force is strong with the new YouTube hype feature. Number 2. Underworld. The billion-dollar crime saga. Before streaming existed, before anyone imagined spending $100 million on 8 episodes of television, George Lucas had a vision that would have fundamentally changed entertainment. Star Wars: Underworld, a live-action series so ambitious and expensive that it almost certainly saved Disney $2.4 billion by never getting made. Conceived in the late 2000s and officially announced in 2005, Underworld was Lucas's attempt to bring Star Wars to television with production values that exceeded most theatrical films. Set between episodes 3 and 4, the series would have explored the criminal enterprises flourishing under Imperial rule, focusing on Coruscant's seedy cantinas, Hutt crime families expanding their territories, and underground resistance movements operating in the shadows of fascist tyranny. The scope was staggering. Lucas commissioned over 60 scripts from writers that producer Rick McCallum described as the most wonderful writers in the world. These weren't rough outlines. They were third-draft scripts, developing enough content for multiple seasons. The stories ranged from intimate character studies to galaxy-spanning criminal conspiracies, with recurring characters building complex relationships across dozens of episodes. But here's the kicker. Each episode would have cost $40 million to produce. Rick McCallum, Lucas's longtime producer, revealed this astronomical figure in recent interviews, explaining that each episode was bigger than the films. With over 60 scripts completed, the series would have required a budget exceeding $2.4 billion, more than half of what Disney eventually paid for all of Lucasfilm. Lucas himself described the show as darker and more character-driven than anything Star Wars had attempted. The series would have featured minimal Jedi presence. Most were dead or in hiding, focusing instead on smugglers, bounty hunters, crime bosses, and ordinary citizens trying to survive in a galaxy under fascist control. McCallum promised storylines that were dark, sexy, and violent, exploring themes of corruption, survival, and moral compromise that would have blown up the whole Star Wars universe. The technology simply didn't exist to create Lucas's vision affordably. He reportedly declared he wouldn't compromise the vision for budget constraints, effectively shelving the project until technology caught up. Instead, we got glimpses through the Clone Wars animated series and later live-action shows that borrowed heavily from Underworld's conceptual DNA, making it perhaps the most influential Star Wars project never produced. Number 3. Holiday Specials Persistent Ghost. The year was 1978, and CBS thought they had struck gold, a Star Wars holiday special featuring the original cast, musical numbers, and enough bizarre variety show elements to haunt fan nightmares for decades. What followed wasn't just bad television. It was a cultural phenomenon that spawned multiple reboot attempts and somehow became more influential than most actual Star Wars films. The original holiday special introduced audiences to Chewbacca's family on Kashyyyk, including his father, Itchy, wife Mala, and son Lumpy. Between painfully long Wookiee conversations without subtitles and variety show segments featuring B. Arthur singing in the Mos Eisley Cantina, the special achieved legendary status for all the wrong reasons. George Lucas famously stated he'd track down every copy with a sledgehammer if he could, yet the special's influence persists in surprising ways. Disney's relationship with the holiday special reveals the fascinating evolution of corporate Star Wars. While Lucas spent decades trying to erase its existence, Disney embraced its camp value through strategic rehabilitation. The 2020 LEGO Star Wars Holiday Special deliberately invoked the original's Life Day concept while maintaining tongue-in-cheek humor that acknowledged the source material's infamous reputation. More significantly, Life Day has been woven into modern canon through subtle references in The Mandalorian, proving that even Disney recognizes the strange cultural power of this maligned celebration. The special's animated Boba Fett segment, the only universally praised element, was eventually released on Disney Plus as The Story of the Faithful Wookiee, officially canonizing at least part of the notorious broadcast. The holiday special's legacy persists because it represents something unique in Star Wars lore: official content that embarrasses its creators while simultaneously influencing future projects. Recent years have seen increased fan appreciation for the special's unintentional comedy, leading to ongoing discussions about spiritual successors that capture the original's innocent ambition without the cringeworthy execution. Even The Mandalorian couldn't resist multiple Life Day references, featuring the holiday in Season 2 and proving that the special's concepts have genuinely enriched Star Wars mythology. What started as a corporate cash grab became an accidental gift to fans who appreciate the franchise's willingness to embrace its own absurdity, something modern Star Wars projects continue to explore through deliberate campiness and self-aware humor. Number 4. KOTOR's Cinematic Dreams. Deferred Knights of the Old Republic didn't just revolutionize Star Wars gaming. It created an entire era of galactic history so compelling that Hollywood spent over a decade trying to bring Revan, Bastila, and the ancient Jedi-Sith wars to the big screen. The closest they came was tantalizingly real, with scripts nearly finished and A-list talent attached, before corporate politics killed what could have been the franchise's most ambitious expansion. The original KOTOR, released in 2003, introduced fans to a Star Wars universe set 4,000 years before the films, where Jedi and Sith armies clashed across the galaxy in massive wars that made the Clone Wars look like border skirmishes. The game's story of memory loss, identity, and redemption through the character of Revan became legendary among fans, spawning sequels, novels, and an ongoing MMO that continues attracting new players 2 decades later. The most concrete development came in 2018, when Disney hired Leda Kalogridis to write a KOTOR film adaptation. Known for her work on complex, character-driven sci-fi narratives like Alita, Battle Angel, and Shutter Island, Kalogridis was reportedly close to finishing the first script of a potential KOTOR trilogy, according to multiple sources speaking to BuzzFeed News in May 2019. Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy confirmed in April 2019 that they were developing something to look at regarding KOTOR, suggesting the project had serious institutional support. Kalogridis would have been the first woman to write a Star Wars film since Lee Brackett co-wrote The Empire Strikes Back in 1980, potentially bringing fresh perspective to the ancient conflicts between Jedi and Sith. Early reports suggested an approach similar to building toward massive galactic conflicts through character-focused films, potentially creating a new trilogy separate from both the Skywalker saga and other planned projects. However, KOTOR faced insurmountable obstacles when Disney declared the expanded universe non-canon in 2014, technically making KOTOR Legends content. The project also competed with multiple other Star Wars film initiatives, including planned trilogies from Rian Johnson and Game of Thrones creators David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, all vying for limited release slots in Disney's carefully planned schedule. No updates have emerged since 2019, suggesting the project remains in development limbo. Recent rumors hint at renewed interest in Old Republic content, particularly following The Mandalorian's success with non-Skywalker storytelling, but no concrete developments have materialized, leaving fans to wonder what might have been the franchise's most epic cinematic expansion. Number 5. Lucas's forgotten film visions. George Lucas didn't just create Star Wars, he envisioned dozens of stories that never made it past his legendary notebooks. And some of these lost concepts would have fundamentally changed how we understand the galaxy far, far away. Hidden in Lucas's extensive archives are treatments, scripts, and concepts that reveal alternate histories, unused characters, and storylines that could have rivaled the main saga in philosophical depth and narrative ambition. The most significant lost Lucas project was his planned sequel trilogy, outlined as early as 1976, when Mark Hamill recalls Lucas asking if he'd be interested in appearing in Episode 9 around 2011. These weren't the sequels Disney eventually produced, but something far more experimental and metaphysical. Lucas's sequels would have focused on Luke rebuilding the Jedi Order while confronting threats from the microbiotic world of the Force, exploring the symbiotic relationship between Jedi, midichlorians, and the mysterious Wills, all-powerful creatures Lucas described as the true controllers of the universe. Lucas developed extensive backstories for characters barely glimpsed in the films. His original plans included multiple trilogies exploring different time periods, one focusing on the very first Jedi set thousands of years before any known timeline, another examining the Jedi's discovery of the Force itself, potentially explaining the mystical energy field's origins and connection to life throughout the galaxy. Perhaps most intriguingly, Lucas's journals from the 1970s and 1980s reveal plans for up to 12 Star Wars films, including stories set in different eras and focusing on entirely new characters. Some concepts were so ambitious they bordered on science fantasy rather than space opera, including time travel elements and interdimensional threats that would have pushed Star Wars into completely uncharted territory. The prequels themselves went through radical revisions that would have created fundamentally different films. Early drafts featured adult Luke and Leia discovering their parentage in the first film, with Anakin's fall happening entirely through flashbacks. Another version began with the Clone Wars already in progress, skipping the political maneuvering that defined the final trilogy. Lucas contemplated having Leia, not Luke, be the focus of the sequel trilogy, stating, "I had planned for the first trilogy to be about the father, the second about the son, and the third about the daughter and the grandchildren." This would have positioned Carrie Fisher as the central character, with Han and Leia's children driving the narrative, rather than Rey and Kylo Ren. Many of these concepts influenced later projects. The sequel trilogy's themes, the Clone Wars character development, and Disney Plus series have all borrowed from Lucas's unused ideas, proving that even abandoned concepts continue shaping the galaxy's evolution decades later. Number 6. Shadows. The ultimate what if. In 1996, something unprecedented happened in Star Wars. A major story unfolded simultaneously across novels, comics, and video games, creating the franchise's first truly multimedia experience. Shadows of the Empire filled the gap between The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi so successfully that it demonstrated the commercial viability of expanded storytelling. But the project's potential film adaptation reveals one of the most intriguing what-if scenarios in Star Wars history. Shadows introduced Prince Sizor, leader of the Black Sun crime syndicate and rival to Darth Vader for Emperor Palpatine's favor. The story followed Luke Skywalker developing his Jedi powers, Leia and Chewbacca planning Han Solo's rescue, and Dash Rendar, a smuggler clearly designed as Han's temporary replacement, navigating criminal underworld politics that would influence Star Wars storytelling for decades. The multimedia approach proved that Star Wars could successfully expand beyond films while maintaining narrative coherence and quality. The novel topped bestseller lists, the Nintendo 64 game became a classic, and the comics sold exceptionally well. More importantly, Shadows felt essential rather than supplementary, addressing questions fans had wondered about since 1980 while introducing concepts that continue influencing modern Star Wars content. Steve Perry, who wrote the original novel, has expressed support for adapting the story as an animated film, though concrete development never materialized during the franchise's most active periods. The project faced timing challenges, as George Lucas's focus remained firmly fixed on the prequel trilogy throughout the late 1990s and early 2000s, leaving little bandwidth for competing projects that might confuse audiences or dilute the brand. Shadow's concepts have proven remarkably prescient, predicting many elements that would become central to modern Star Wars storytelling. The criminal underworld elements heavily influenced projects like Solo and The Mandalorian, while the morally complex characters operating in the galaxy's gray areas became a hallmark of Disney-era content. Black Sun itself was eventually canonized through the Clone Wars, proving the enduring appeal of Perry's criminal syndicate concept. Recent speculation about potential adaptations continues surfacing among fans and industry observers, particularly given Disney's success with projects exploring the galaxy's criminal elements. While Prince Xizor remains relegated to Legends continuity, the fundamental approach of Shadows, exploring untold stories between existing films through multiple media formats, has become Disney's standard operating procedure for franchise expansion. The greatest Star Wars stories are the ones that were never told. Hit subscribe, and may the Force guide you to our next exploration of the galaxy's most guarded secrets.